Well, howdy there, partner. Welcome back to your next math lesson. We are in section 4-5. You guys can turn to page 225 in your books, or should I say you can mosey on over to page 225 and follow along. We're going to talk about now the slope-intercept form of a line. You all know how to find the slope of a line. You all know how to write the equation of a proportional relationship or direct variation relationship. And now y'all are going to learn the slope-intercept form of a line. Isn't that rootin' tootin' fun? Alright, I'm going to stop. So we had y equals kx in the last section. And I think we used y equals mx in one of the sections, but now we have y equals mx plus b. And I think you've all seen this before, but this is called slope-intercept form. And this is the equation of a non-proportional linear relationship. So if it's proportional, you don't have this part. And that means that your graph goes through the origin. But when it's in this form, m is our slope and b is our y-intercept. So the y-intercept of a line is the y-coordinate of the point where the line crosses the y-axis. And we'll look at a few different examples here. So here's an equation. Y equals mx plus b. And m would be 1/2 and b is 1. So if you look at the graph of that, the y-intercept is 1. That means that's the point where it crosses the y-axis. I see so many kids do this, not the x-axis. It's the y-intercept where it crosses the y-axis. This vertical line, that's the y-intercept. It has to cross this line, not this line. Y, not x. Y-intercept, y-intercept, y-intercept. Ooh, it went away. And then the slope is 1/2. Remember, we go from any point, we can go up 1 over 2. So we talked about the slope being rise over run. The rise is 1, the run is 2. And so this is what the graph of a line in slope-intercept form is. And this is on page 225. But you guys can now flip to page 226 if it's a non-proportional linear relationship. Then the graph goes through the point 0b, which is the y-intercept. If it's proportional, then it goes through 0, 0. So if it's proportional, the y-intercept is technically 0. But if it's not proportional, non-proportional, then the y-intercept is anything other than 0. So it's still a line, but proportional goes to the origin, non-proportional has a different y-intercept. Okay? So this y equals mx plus b actually comes from the slope formula. If you remember this formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, we're going to say one of the points is the y-intercept, 0b, and one of the points, we'll just call it xy. And if I simplify this and plug in x and y in 0 and b, then we get this equation. And if I multiply both sides by x and then add b to both sides, then this is where we get this form. So you don't have to know exactly where it comes from, but it is derived from the slope formula and using the point 0b and xy as our 2 points that we plug into the slope formula. So you can actually fill this out on page 226. There are some boxes here. You can pause it if you need a minute to go back and fill this in, but that way you have this for your notes. Okay, so also on page 226 is our first example. So we'll start pretty simple. If you have the equation, can you identify the slope and the y-intercept? And it's really, really basic. So if it is in this form, y equals mx plus b, all right, and if you can't tell -4, it's not like technically plus b, but we can say this is the same as plus -4. So m, the number in front of x, is our slope. So the slope is 2/3, and then b is -4. Our y-intercept is -4. And that's all you have to do for that. So if it's already in this form, slope is 2/3, y is -4. So not 4, but -4. So just be careful that if it's a minus, that's the same as like plus -4. Or whatever this number is, just take the sign with it as your y-intercept. So you guys pause and do the one at the top of page 227. And I think one example should be good for that. But now you're going to have to write equations in slope-intercept form. So on page 227, example 2, we're going to write the equation in slope-intercept form. This one's actually pretty simple too. If they already give you the slope and the y-intercept, we'll start with our slope-intercept form. The slope is -3, so we'll plug that in here. And then we'll plug in -4 for b. So it's just putting the slope in the slope spot, the y-intercept in the y-intercept spot. And you could simplify it. So we could say that the equation y is 3x minus 4. So for these, all you have to do is write them in slope-intercept form. So if you have this and this, really easy, just plug it in. If you have this, then you should also be able to identify the slope and the y-intercept, so kind of going both ways. The last thing for this first, okay, so let's just go really quick. If the slope, this is not in your book, so on page 228 in the margins, you can write this one if it ever shows up. My internet's being very slow right now. No, doesn't want to show up. Are you going to show up? Oh, there it is. Okay. Write the equation of a line in slope-intercept form with a slope of 3/4 and a y-intercept of 2. So again, if we start with y equals mx plus b slope-intercept form, then m is 3/4 and b is 2, so just plug those in. This will be 3/4 x plus 2. Good? So if you have any questions, just write them down in the margins and remember to ask me in class. But I think it's pretty self-explanatory. All right. The last thing for this section is writing equations in slope-intercept form from the graph. So we need to first find where it crosses the y-axis, and that will be our y-intercept, which is the b part. Then we have to find the slope from the graph, which is the m part, and then plug it in. So if we want to find the y-intercept, it's just where it crosses the y-axis, so just find the point. It's -1. And then our slope, pick any 2 points on the line. So remember we talked about this the other day. If I take, say, this point and this point, then to get from here to here, I have to go up 3 and over 2. So the rise over run is 3/2. So now that I have slope and y-intercept, really easy to write the equation. Slope goes here, y-intercept goes here. And there's your equation. So let's look at another example. This is on page 228, the graph there. We want to write the equation of this line. And we're going to write the equation in slope-intercept form. So first we have to find the y-intercept. So if you look at this graph, take a second, and the y-intercept is at what point? And then the rise over run, the slope is positive or negative for this line? What do you think? Think about it for a second. So our y-intercept is 4. If you said 4, give yourself a pat on the back, or just give yourself a big old yee-haw, you know, the cowboy hat and all. So the y-intercept is 4. And gosh darn it, we are correct. Now our slope, if I use these 2 points, I could use this point and this point, really any 2 points on the graph, but if I'm going from left to right, I would have to go down 1 and 2 to the right. So down means -1, and 2 to the right means 2. Let's see if I can finally get this. -1/2. There we go. Finally worked for me. So we go down 1, 2 to the right, and that is our slope. And now the last thing is just write the equation. So plug in -1/2 for m and plug in 4 for b, and then you've got your equation. All right, we'll do one more example together. So for this graph, what is the y-intercept? Take a second, see if you can figure it out. There it is right there. And it is -2. Now the slope of this line, is it positive or negative? Since it's going up, it has a positive slope. And let's just use the 2 points they give us. So if I'm going from this point to this point, we have to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and over 3. So up 5 is positive 5, right 3 is positive 3. So the slope is 5/3. So y equals mx plus b plus -2. So I'm just going to put -2. Instead of plus -2, you could just put -2. So slope, y-intercept. And this is important to know because eventually we're going to be graphing lines using slope-intercept form. So you should also know how to write the equation of a line by finding the slope and the y-intercept and plugging them into y equals mx plus b form. So on page 229, at the top of page 229, you guys do that one, the chalk problem, write the equation of the line that's graphed there, and that's where we're going to stop. And the next video will be the next section.